and welcome back to another episode of the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Willert, and I'm sitting here with Pastor Mike Rigglesworth and Bradley, the man with no last name on the board. Stephen is unfortunately at a funeral, and so he will not be with us today. But either way, we got a good board and a great guest speaker for you to talk on a really important topic. But before we go to bring him on, let us do a quick shout out to the coffee that we are drinking today. Once again, we are drinking coffee from a place in Lewiston, New York called Orange Cat, and the flavor that we have is Creme Bruelee. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I like it.
I like it. It's actually good. One that I might not drink cream in my coffee, but I still did it anyways. But it's still good. Creme Bruelee, go check it out in Lewiston, New York. Now today, we have a special guest with us. We have Joe Dallas here on the podcast to talk about a topic that's really pertinent that we need to discuss. And the idea is Christians in a cancel culture. And this actually comes from a book that was published within the last year that he titled Christians in a Cancel Culture, Speaking with Truth and Grace in a Hostile World. Now, before I bring him on, let me do a quick bio on him, and then we'll bring him in to discuss some of the questions that we have about Christians in a cancel culture. Joe Dallas is an author, conference speaker, and ordained pastoral counselor. He directs a biblical counseling ministry for those dealing with sexual and relational problems. He received his master's degree in Christian counseling from Vision University, San Diego, California, and is a member of the American Association of Christian Counselors. He is the author of the daily blog Joe Dallas Online and a contributing writer for the Christian Research Journal. His articles have appeared in Christianity Today, the Journal of Christian Healing, and the Southern California Christian Times. His work has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, Moody Monthly, New Man Magazine, and the Boston Globe. He has addressed conferences, churches, and universities across the country, including the Promise Keepers Men Conference, Moody Bible Church of Chicago, the Christian Association for Professional Studies, Princeton Theological Seminary, and the Experience Conference. He has done a lot, folks. Joe and his wife, Renee, reside in Orange County, California, with their 2 sons. So please give a warm welcome to the Caffeinated Christian Podcast, Joe Dallas. How you doing today?
Hey, guys. Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We are excited to talk about this topic. And yeah, so one of the first questions we like to start off with, typically with every guest we have, is tell us a little bit more about yourself and your ministry and sort of how you came to Christianity, or sort of your testimony, to just really get the listeners to understand more about you.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying when you were reading my bio, I got to change the wording on that thing. I mean, I was starting to fall asleep while you read it, but a couple of the points were good. One of them being I do a counseling ministry. I think because I've needed so much counseling myself, had a lot of emotional struggles as a kid, lots of them, including and sexual struggles as well. By the time I was 16, I was dating a girl who took me to church, Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, 1971. So I'm 67 now. Why, that was at the beginning of what now is referred to as the Jesus movement. Tons of hippies getting saved, Calvary Chapel bursting at the seams. Chuck Smith was everybody's great dad. I mean, it was an awesome time. That's when I came to faith. But I came to faith as someone who had already been involved in homosexuality. I thought that if I was born again, I'd have no more temptations in that area. I found that not to be true, not because I believe homosexuality is something God intended, but just because like any sin of the flesh, it can be very deeply ingrained. And so I was very naive. After about 6 years, I said, I'm done. I've tried to, be a sanctified Christian who never has the wrong temptations, and I've still got the wrong temptations. I wasn't acting on them, but I still thought I should be completely delivered. And that led to about a 7-year nosedive where I went whole hog into the gay community, then into the gay church. I was on staff with a pro-gay church, and then into gay activism. God brought me to repentance in 1984. All that to say, I needed counseling. So that a lot of that led to me looking into the need to talk about what's happening in the soul without going outside the parameters of what is biblical, what is God's will. I realized within about 6 years that there were a lot of people who were in a similar position to where I had been, Christians in churches struggling. I started ministering to them in 1987. But after about 10 years of doing that, I realized it was not going to be enough to minister to people who were dealing with homosexuality, sexual addiction, transgender. I was also going to have to start defending the right to minister to such people, because there was more and more opposition to holding an Orthodox Christian viewpoint on marriage and sexuality.
Right.
And that led me to realize, wow, to be a believer now, fast forward to 2022, you have to not only know what you believe, you have to know how to express what you believe. And now a new wrinkle's been added. You got to defend what you believe. So we're no longer just talking as, ambassadors for Christ or apologists ever ready to give an answer. We're also on the defense. We're on the witness stand, basically. We're being cross-examined. The attorneys can get very hostile. My book subtitle is Speaking with Truth and Grace in a Hostile World. And I know the whole world isn't hostile towards us.
Right.
But the social influences in the culture are increasingly hostile to a biblically based worldview on key issues. I accidentally had to start defending, because I never set out to do that. But I've come to realize that now more than ever, believers of all kinds are called on to defend. So that brings me to where I am now, and also to why I wrote the book.
That's great. And the cancel culture is a really hot button issue today. And so let's dive into this idea of cancel culture. Can you speak to how we should define cancel culture, as well as where it has gone in today's world?
Yeah, trying to define it is tough. You know how today terms keep morphing?
Yeah.
Just when you think you know what it means and you know how to explain it, boom. And so it's kind of like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. That's pretty hard to do. Cancel culture started technically as a few years back as the social trend to canceling out the voices or the images of unacceptable people, taking certain people out of history, getting certain movies off of TV, tearing down statues. That cancel culture was basically, we're going to cancel either your legacy or your influence because we've determined you were racist or sexist or bigoted in some way. But the term has morphed now. The much broader meaning is social influences within the culture who want to cancel your voice or your influence. That's basically what it's about.
Okay.
And the reason that matters so much to a Christian, what the heck is Christianity without communication?
Right.
I mean, if you can't communicate, you can't live the faith out. People are saved by hearing the preaching of the word. People are discipled by teaching the word. We love each other largely by encouraging each other. If you take expression out of Christianity, you don't have Christianity.
Right.
So this is why it's a vital enough issue we need to be talking about it. But anyway, in the broadest sense, that's how I would define cancel culture. Social influences or forces that are trying to cancel the voice, the Orthodox voice on hot button issues.
Okay. So in your book, you talk about three main points that we really need to consider when we're talking to people who have some hostility towards what we believe. You talk about the who, the what, the when, and the how. So can you elaborate a little bit on why are these three things so important for us to consider, and what their historical roots are?
Yeah, well, it's kind of following Jesus' model, you know? Mm-hmm. He was not cookie cutter in his approach to people. And since he was and is God incarnate, that means that God is not cookie cutter in his approach to people.
Right.
So the who is very important. Who am I talking to? Where have they been? What has been their life experience? How are they responding to truth? So, for example, I mean, you've got people who really need an abrupt kind of, hey, wake up. And, he slaps the Pharisee. You've got a woman taken into adultery who's not even trying to defend what she did. She's just helpless.
Yeah.
He's got a completely different approach to her. So what I was trying to call for was, let's understand who we're dealing with. I mean, the uniqueness of the individual. And a lot of that requires, by the way, a lot of listening. If I'm approaching someone who's gay or someone who's transgender or a woman who's had an abortion or someone who believes that because I'm a white male, I have to be racist, I don't want to start in with my pat answers.
Right.
Because I don't know where she's coming from or where he's coming from. I need to hear from that person. What's your life experience been? What is your worldview? How did you come to believe what you believe about me? And then having done that, two things have happened. one, I can give an informed answer, because a pat answer is not necessarily an informed answer. It's just your preconceived idea of what you should say. It may be true, but it may not be relevant or appropriate. Also, I hopefully will have a little more credibility with that person, because I showed the respect of listening. I basically said, tell me where you're coming from, where you've been, what your life is about. And that shows, hopefully, that I'm not just an Amway guy trying to make a pitch. No disrespect to Amway. I'm a Fuller Rush guy trying to make a pitch. Okay, I'm not selling something here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to relate. And in any relationship, if you're not listening, you're not having much of a relationship. So that's why I say considering those items is a real critical part of being a good steward of truth.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because one of the things I've always said is I can't really appreciate too much or stand what I call bumper sticker theology, where it's almost like, here's the problems of the world. Let's just put a one-line takeaway from everything you just heard, realizing like it shouldn't work like that. And Greg Koukl points that out in his book on tactics. Like, people's lives are difficult and nuanced. Why should our responses be simple and like easy for them? We have to be able to approach them at where they're at, rather than just a generic umbrella coverage for everyone's life. So I really appreciate the fact of what you're saying when it comes to that.
Yeah, I remember when I was very vulnerable, 1984, I was brought to repentance, and I realized, okay, I've got to change everything. I mean, I had to relocate into another county. I had to cut off most of my friends. My whole identity had been gay and gay activism, and now I was nothing. I was at ground zero, 29 years old. Now what? And I was in a lot of grief, too, because I had pretty egregiously sinned. I think it's still okay to say that.
Yeah.
And I had just made a mess out of everything. So I went to a church. I went into the prayer room. They said, we invite you to come seek God after the service if you want to. I thought, that's great. I really need to do that. I'm in there, weeping, grieving, praying hard. And a guy comes up who's like on a prayer team or whatever, says, hey, what can I pray for you? I said, well, this is where I've been. This is what I'm doing. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm in a lot of grief. I mean, right now I just feel incredibly sad and blah, blah, blah. And he basically cut in with, well, what does the Bible say? Okay. I appreciate that. We've got to get back to, okay, like Paul said, what saith the scripture? We have to ask that question. But there was something in that just reeked of a kind of insensitive arrogance, like, well, let's cut to it's almost like telling, not quite, but like somebody who's just lost a loved one to death.
Right.
Oh, well, they're with the Lord now.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
And you're bypassing the grief.
Nothing.
Yeah. You just bypass the grief and the pain and hurt that they're feeling. Yeah,
that's the point, and that's why the cookie cutter approach, I'm glad you pointed that out, is so counterproductive to everything we really want to do.
Yeah,
right.
I actually had a question about the Bible and like cancel culture. Is there a biblical sort of mandate to train ourselves and be able to respond to cancel culture in a biblical manner?
I think if we take the whole witness of Scripture, we have a mandate to be properly representing truth. Whether you look at it from the perspective of an Old Testament prophet or an Old Testament priest or a New Testament believer evangelizing people. I mean, when Peter said, be ever ready to give an answer, that was for everybody. And I think that we do have the biblical mandate. This is where it gets tricky, though. I think our mandate is not necessarily to win the culture, although I want to win the culture. I would crave winning the culture. That may or may not happen. But I think our mandate is to speak to the culture regardless, because we do need to know, number one, that we faithfully represented God. God has an opinion on social justice. God has an opinion on abortion, on racism, on mistreatment of people, on sexuality. And I don't see any of us as being like, the warlords of righteousness. Well, we have to make sure they hear God's opinion, these poor heathens. But by the same token, yes, we need to express what we know to be true. And I think in that sense, we do have the mandate to speak to the culture. But we have a mandate also to speak to injustice. I mean, when I'm talking about cancel culture, I'm talking about the specific issues. God has an opinion on these 5 that I brought up: sexuality, transgender, race, and so forth. But there's also a broader issue. Are we being fair with each other? And is there any hope for any society that celebrates treating each other unfairly? We're resorting to mob scenes. We're resorting to shutting each other up. We're resorting to something that, even if you take it outside of a Christian context, it's not going to work. I mean, if we're basically saying the bully is going to come out on top, what kind of a world is that going to be? What kind of a nation is that going to be? So in that sense, too, I think we have a mandate, and I know that's taking it out of the apologist and maybe even more into the political, but I don't see that they have to contradict each other. So, yeah, I think we do have a biblical mandate to express truth. Of course, we have the mandate also to be practicing truth in the way we deal with things. And that's why I say I would like to win the culture. More importantly, I want to run a race in a faithful way. I'm going to answer to God at the risk of sounding very lofty about the whole thing, but it's true. Yeah. So if I'm on the wrong side of history, I'm okay with that. I don't want to be on the wrong side of God. And in that sense, I want to make sure that I have been clear as to where I stand. And when I'm pressured to change my stand, clear as to why I will not change my stand, that it's a non-negotiable. I want to do that in a way that is fair, respectful, and intelligent, and above all, faithful to Scripture. And, you know, some people are going to hear that and it'll bear good fruit, and some people are just going to throw rocks at me. All right. As long as I know to the best of my ability I was a good steward, that to me is the end game.
Yeah, I like that. Right. Now, in chapter 2 of your book, you mention a point that in our modern church might sound a little strange, but personally I find it extremely refreshing. This is what you write. Yet good doesn't always mean nice, and the believer who makes niceness his primary goal is the danger of becoming a caver. Can you discuss what you mean in chapter 2 by cavers and ravers and how that responds to the cancer culture?
Yeah, I've been both, so guilty. But okay. The caver basically puts the priority on being nice and getting along. Oh, you're going to be offended by my giving you an honest answer. You ask me where I stand on gay marriage, but I know you're pro-gay, so well, I don't know, what kind of coffee is that again you're drinking? Yeah, that type of thing. You just kind of the raver is like, well, I'll tell you where I stand, and if you give me any attitude, I'm going to be in your face, you know. And the raver, by the way, is often born out of the pressure we're feeling. I got to say, this is a time when the first of all, the Christian conservative voice, and I would say even the socially conservative voice, is treated, or those who have such a voice, treated with a contempt, an unjust attitude, and a lot of unjust treatment. Okay, a lot of us are losing careers, we're losing reputation, we're losing autonomy, all because we don't hold the right position according to the culture. So that can make a raver out of you. But like James said, the wrath of man doesn't work the righteousness of God. So I think that today a common misunderstanding we have in the church is what the heck we're here for. A lot of people really think if in my church everybody feels welcome, if everybody feels comfortable, if everybody feels safe with each other and we're all getting along and people all think I'm nice, then I've reached them. That's not true. I think if you can be nice, great. I would rather be nice than not.
Right.
But there's a difference between pleasing people and reaching people. If truth hasn't been expressed and considered and ultimately converted to, how can we say we've reached people? I mean, the early Christians had a sense of urgency we need to be paying more attention to today. To them, this was life and death stuff. Yeah. I mean, to them, people, you look at the way they lived and the way they preached and the way they put priorities in place. To them, people were either lost or they were saved. Something was right or it was wrong. Something was error or it was truth. I mean, boom. The urgency was driven by those basic truths. And I think we need to get back to that. We've adopted the idea, maybe with the user-friendly, seeker-friendly, I don't know, whatever approach we've been taking. I think we're hugely missing the mark. People are not born again by being nice into the kingdom. If you can be nice, so much the better. But that's not the bottom line. The bottom line is our message clear as to how to be born again. And then if you are born again, when we are discipling people, are our messages to the people we are teaching clear and biblically solid. That to me is the issue above nice.
Yeah, I like that too, because let's all agree here. every one of us is going to find ourselves in either one or both of these positions sometime in their life when it comes to friends and society and culture.
sure.
Now, you said you were in both of them. Now, this might not fit for every single person listening or all of us here, but how did you personally discern when too much pushback was too much pushback towards the culture, even though your message was truthful?
I discerned it after I blew it.
Okay.
That's how I learn almost everything.
Yeah.
I have to blow it, and then I go, "Oh, I get it now."
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that
Well, that's-
I've always said.
I'm glad to know I'm not the only one.
Say he did it the hard way.
Yeah.
That's my epitaph.
Yeah, I like that.
No, I think that here's the way it's worked for me. There's a real rush in being angry and right at the same time.
Mm.
I mean, it can be almost a manic high.
Right.
I'm mad and I'm right. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a place for that. I mean, righteous anger, if it wasn't for righteous anger, where would the most important social movements we've ever had have been? Where would the civil rights movement be? The abolitionist movement? I mean, righteous anger drives some very important things. But there's also the adrenaline rush that comes with it that you can get hooked on. And also, it's not too hard for it to morph into something very pharisaical. I like being right. I like putting you down because you're wrong. And that's when the pushback is too much. When we're basically saying to the culture, we assume a position of authority you never gave us, and we assume a position of moral superiority which you are not in agreement with, then I think we're going to be guilty of what Paul said he would be doing if he spoke without love. It would just be that clang, clang, clang.
Right.
Now, when I was pushed too hard, and this is when it sobered me up, I was speaking to a large meeting in Salt Lake City, not a Mormon meeting, but it was a meeting that a ton of gay activists showed up at. They were heckling me, screaming at me, disrupting everything. And, I finally got so fried, not over the fact that they didn't like me, but that this was at a university that was, now this is how naive I was, a university where we were supposed to have freedom to exchange ideas, ha, ha, ha. So I was furious and finally just, and I'm pretty good at roaring if I have to. And I roared them down and they all shut up and I took charge and I felt on my chest went out at least 2 inches. I was so pumped.
Yeah.
and I won. I won. And then when I got back to the hotel, I realized, no, I didn't. Because what was accomplished tonight? Zero.
Right.
Nobody really heard truth. They just heard me knock them down. And that started me thinking about when I was a gay activist, and this is very relevant. We would love it when Christians said stupid things. We loved it because we could use that. We could record somebody saying the sodomites are getting AIDS because they deserve it. It's God's judgment. Oh, thank you. Because we could take that, play the recording for our constituents and say, you see how much Christians hate you? We are right. They are wrong. And so Christians would lose credibility and we would take full advantage of that. And I'm sure a lot of people left that meeting where I just threw my tantrum and said, well, Joe Dallas just proved everything we believe about fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah.
So that's how I've learned that, pushing back against the culture does not mean taking a sledgehammer to the culture. It means properly resisting what is wrong, speaking truth. And like Paul told Timothy, the servant of the Lord must not strive, gentle to all. It doesn't mean being a doormat mouse, but it means basically keep your goal in mind. It is to be faithful to truth and to win people as possible.
Right. Now, it seems to be pretty clear that the cultural majority is pro-gay in the sense that they're not only gay accepting, but they're also gay affirming. Like I received an email from a congregant of a former church that I pastored the other day who was very opposed to the homosexual lifestyle and is now reconsidering her position. And so we're seeing this shift that's taking place not only in this cultural issue, but many others. And it's easy for us to sort of, like we were talking about before, kind of capitulate on our beliefs and not express those beliefs out of fear of retribution from somebody or fear of losing a relationship that we deeply treasure. So How are we as Christians, how are we able to hold a firm line in what we believe and at the same time be able to maintain a relationship with somebody? So what are your thoughts on that?
Whew. Write a book on that and you're set for life.
Right.
If you really answer that succinctly, I mean, my short answer is I'm not sure. I will tell you what I think, at least so far, we need to be keeping in mind. We know that there will be people who are going to shut the door regardless, no matter how intelligent, respectful, clear, and loving we are. There are people who will walk away. They will say, you guys are haters, you're bigots, I want nothing more to do with you. We're living in a crusade, a time of a crusade. The infidels need to be converted. We're the infidels. And many people see the crusade as righteous. Now, as I pointed out in the book, a lot of people, I don't think they even believe in what they're saying. But it's convenient for them and it suits their goals. So just for example, to veer off a little, I believe that cancel culture is a big government dream. Because if more and more bureaucracy can be established to regulate our speech and regulate our beliefs, that's going to mushroom the government. People who want big government will want that even if they don't agree with a specific goal. So there are a lot of people who support a much expanded government who secretly hold traditional views on marriage and sexuality and justice, but they're not going to say so because they want to see an expansion. But there are plenty of other people who are true believers. And they truly believe that we are wrong, that we are dangerous, that we need to be silent. You see? So for all of those reasons, I think we need to keep in mind the need to basically retain clarity, but to also not judge how well we've done by the outcome. If we are too outcome oriented, we're going to back off and we're going to keep saying, well, if people think we're hateful, we have to find a way to make them not think we're hateful. We can't do that. I mean, that's not going to happen. And we'll be forever scrambling to find new and improved ways to speak the truth without realizing that people still do respond to truth. And they really do. I mean, we've got to trust that if what we're saying is true, the Spirit of God will confirm it and it will bear good fruit. But one other thing briefly in answer to your question, I think it does help to appeal to people's sense of fairness. So if I think a relationship is being threatened because of my position, which in most cases, as you know, we're not even imposing our positions in most cases. In most cases, we're put on the spot. And, you know, you just mentioned, well, I went to church last Sunday. Oh, are you anti-woman? Are you anti-gay? Are you a bigot? It's like, okay, now I'm on the defense. I like to appeal to fairness by saying, are we big enough to handle the fact that we have different worldviews? Right. Is our relationship mature enough that we can still have a relationship when we disagree? Right. Is it fair for you to call me a hater because I have a different view? Do you not disapprove of some things? Do you? Well, if you disapprove of some things, do you hate the people you disapprove of? You don't? Well, neither do I. You see, you try to appeal to a sense of fairness to frame the conversation so that right off the bat, you're saying, I value our relationship. I want us to maintain goodwill with each other. Can we be fair with each other? It's not so much even now who's right, who's wrong, but is it fair for us to silence each other because we disagree with each other? So sometimes that helps. Often it does.
Right. Good. Yeah, and I had a person say to me once that sometimes you have to love people more than your relationship to them, and I think that definitely rings true in the cultural moment that we're living in right now, because we may have to speak truth to somebody who doesn't want to hear it and will choose to end that relationship. But I appreciated what you said, that we can't judge the success of that conversation based on the outcome. I'm going to carry that with me.
Yeah, because if we do, we'd have to say Jesus was a failure.
Right.
When he taught in John chapter 6, most of his disciples left.
Yeah.
So what are we supposed to say? He said it the wrong way?
Sorry. So I had a question about how can our conscience help us? And more specifically, are there ways to train ourselves to better hear, listen, and act on how the Spirit is leading us and what to do in cancel culture?
Yeah. Well, I like you bringing up the idea of how we can better discern how the Spirit is leading us. I know that's a subjective call.
Yeah.
I mean, we can know the truth, what is clearly revealed in the Word. What's the Logos? I also believe we should pay attention to the Rhema, but the Rhema is always subject to the Logos, of course. But still, I mean, I look at the book of Acts again, and I see a lot of Rhema going on there as people were discerning, where should I go, what should I say, and so forth. So I think if we trust what James said, if you lack wisdom, ask of God, you're going to get it. He will give it to you liberally, and believe that. Then I think that we can maintain a sensitivity to the Spirit of God. What do you feel God is leading you to say? And also sensitivity to the person that we're dealing with. And I think if we operate in that, it's amazing the kind of conversations we can have. I think personally, that's what that conversation between Jesus and Nicodemus was about. This was a guy from a group that was openly hostile to Jesus. And yet here he comes and they're having a conversation. That to me says a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, if we are keeping it, I don't know the formula necessarily for this, but what we should be kind of getting across to people is that we very much value whatever level of relationship we have with them, coworker, friend, family member, whatever. And we also very much value the truth we have come to embrace. And you know when you're talking to somebody who's convinced of what they believe, even if they're wrong. I think it was Spurgeon who said that, you know, the man who is the attorney who is cross-examining a witness to discredit him knows if he's up against an honest man.
Yeah.
And he can tell it. He can tell, like, look, I'm going to do everything I can to trip this guy up, but I can tell he really believes what he believes. So in that sense, I think that we need, obviously, to be well-grounded in our own relationship with God, sensitive to the leading of the Spirit. And you know, I often say as opportunity and wisdom dictate. I've got a coworker I want to talk to. I really feel like I would like to do that. I can't just lean over the cubicle and say, are you saved? So I'm going to try to establish a relationship. I'm going to be authentic. And then as opportunity, we're going out to lunch together. Good. Now, is it wise, as much as I can tell, is it wise to bring it up now? Fine. I think a lot of what, face it, we're going to learn by trial and error. A lot of times we're going to be clumsy. We're going to get it wrong, whatever. But I don't see any other way we're going to learn to discern the difference between, was that the Spirit of God leading me, or was it just my own impulsivity?
Right.
See?
Yeah, I like that you said that, because as I was reading through your book, I've learned a lot, and as well as two massive assumptions seem to hit me from the cancel culture. And the first one is that those who try to cancel people automatically assume that they have a correct view of reality. That's like a base assumption. Secondly, if you disagree with them, your point of view is not even worth the dignity of consideration. Can you speak to how through the cancel culture we need to, even as Christians, give other people dignity when having conversations and understanding their worldview? Because that's really important.
That's very critical. In fact, that is one of the ways I believe we win people to truth, is when they make a contrast between the way we conduct ourselves and the way others do. Because you're absolutely right. Plenty of people with a cancel culture mentality view us as essentially evil, view our positions as not even being worth the dignity of consideration. Right. Now, if a third party, if the audience, if you want to look at it that way, is watching that, when we show that by contrast, we do believe that the other person's view is worth the dignity of consideration, no matter how wrong we believe it is, right off the bat, that gets people's attention. See? And so I do think some people start reconsidering the truth by looking at the way we conduct ourselves when we are being, treated with that idea that what you say is not even worth consideration. So what I like to point out is, with all due respect, if you have already determined that what I say is so odious that it's not worth considering, can you tell me on what basis you reached that conclusion?
Right.
I often say, okay, Josh McDowell's classic book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Mm-hmm. Today, we've got a verdict that demands some evidence.
Yes.
The verdict's already been passed,
Yes.
but where's the evidence?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the evidence that what we teach is hateful and destructive and all these awful things? One thing I read an activist say years ago, and I've never forgotten it, is repeated telling makes it so.
Hmm.
Just keep repeating it.
Hmm.
Repeat it so often that people will come to assume, oh, that must be an established fact. Why? Because I can verify it? Nope, because everybody says it.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, I like that. I always there's the typical law line, innocent until proven guilty, and I always say now in today's culture we are guilty until proven innocent, which is unfortunate because it just shouldn't be the case. Because I always say the person who makes the claim has to prove the claim, and if you're telling me you're wrong or I'm guilty or I'm right and innocent, I'm the one professing the claim, and I hold the burden of proof when it comes to it.
See, that's the point exactly. I think that we should not be in a position of having to prove our innocence. What needs to be done is proof of our guilt, and that's what I will often ask for.
Mm-hmm.
When I spoke at Princeton, it's been 20 years now, I spoke at Princeton Theological Seminary. When I went into the building, the main chapel I was speaking at, in the foyer area, there were tables set out with signs all around them saying this is a safe space in case the teacher damages you or the speaker damages you.
Jeez.
If you feel you've been injured by what Joe Dallas says, and I felt like, okay, you've already determined that my message is injurious. And what I wanted to know was, what did you base that on? You have found me guilty, and I didn't even know I'd had a trial.
Yeah, right. You didn't even give your message yet, which is fascinating. Now, I think everyone needs to pick up this book because the latter chapters go through certain topics and how the cancel culture looks at it and how we as Christians should respond to it. Now, one of the topics really hits home with what I'm seeing in this area, and it's an important hot button topic, and it's about the idea of the denomination of who call themselves progressive Christians. Yes. Now, can you discuss what is happening within this culture that is growing the idea of progressive Christianity and why you titled your chapter An Orgy of Virtue? Because I think the title is perfect for what is happening within the church.
Well, I think it is largely an orgy of virtue. I think that it is becoming virtuous to get fuzzy. Yeah. And it's becoming virtuous to overturn established beliefs in the interest of having a better, sort of a new and improved Christianity. And this is where the definitions, again, get fuzzy. You know, they keep morphing. Progressive Christianity, it used to be easier to define as something which is simply socially progressive. Now, it almost seems like the best definition I can give, or the best defining term I can give for it, is fuzzy. Yeah. It's basically Christianity apart from the edges. Where you have progressive Christianity, you do away with the exclusive borders. According to progressive Christianity, Jesus is not the only way to the Father. The definition of normal sexuality is not heterosexual. The definition of marriage is up for grabs. There is no hell. Humanity is not inherently sinful. We're inherently good. We just need to learn how good we are. Those are some of the basic underlying assumptions of progressive Christianity that get played out in the way progressive Christianity approaches issues like teaching, and even its definition of evangelism would be something very different than ours. Here's the problem. A lot of people embracing progressive Christianity don't even know they're embracing it, number one. Number two, a lot of people who promote it do so in such a clever way that a lot of ill-informed people will think, oh, well, that sounds right. What's your problem with it, Mr. Dallas? You see? And then number three, I think that a lot of people are probably justifiably not happy with the way the church has approached these issues in the past. Yeah. So a lot of people are looking at the form of preaching or the form of speaking to social issues, the attitude, the expressions, and they're saying, well, I don't want to be like that. Mm-hmm. So let's embrace this new position. And I think in doing that, they're basically not looking at how we can improve the way of messaging. They're looking at how we can change the message. Yeah. That's the big difference. You know, when I was part of the Jesus movement, we did that largely in that, not that era of progressive Christianity, but we changed the way of messaging, but we never touched the message. It is true. And a lot of people thought we were liberal and we were not. Mm-hmm. We were so old fashioned. We were quaint in our doctrine.
Yeah.
But we changed the style of worship. Yeah. The style of dress at church. Yeah. Okay. That we changed, but we certainly we didn't touch the scripture. We never touched doctrine. We never touched the basics of the faith, study of the word, prayer life, evangelism, and so forth. This is why I say progressive Christianity is not about style. It's about substance. It's about making the substance of the gospel fuzzy.
Yeah. It's really interesting. A lot of the progressive Christians that I have talked to or have seen Christians moving into that sort of camp, it's almost to them like it's a all or nothing type belief where I disagree with this orthodox view, say on the rapture, right? Or what my church says on the rapture. Therefore, like I might be progressive Christianity and therefore need to accept all of the tenets of it. And kind of how I relate it to is the topic of Black Lives Matter. We think Black Lives Matter, and a lot of the tenets of the organization, we would go, yeah, this is a really good thing. There's certain rights and justice that needs to be handled, but that doesn't follow I need to accept everything the organization stands for full-heartedly. And I see that a lot within the youth today, where it's either all or nothing when it comes to what my parents believe or what the church believe. And if they disagree with one of the tenets, it's almost like they reject all of it or move to a whole different camp that it just doesn't have the similar taste of what they come from.
Yeah, I really think we're in the season of the unexamined passion.
Right.
Yeah.
I think people need passion. Good for them. People want a cause. People want something. Show me an injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Show me a righteous cause. Show me an oppressed people, and I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But you need to examine the cause. So, for example, somebody says Black Lives Matter. Well, now, who the heck is going to argue with that?
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I feel like pulling out the term pro-life and saying, okay, if it works that way, aren't you pro-life?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, people do make that distinction, but they don't make this one. I think the point is, a part of our job, I think, is not just speaking prophetically to the culture about the basics of the faith, but also about some sense of fairness and intelligence. Even that probably came out wrong, but I mean, seriously, it is intelligent to examine a cause that you're going to give yourself before you go out and break windows and scream at people and raise a fit publicly. Know that you have a good reason for doing it, which of course you don't. You don't need to do any of that to establish a voice. But the point is, what I think we need to be encouraging people to do is look at the facts before you give yourself to your passion. Make sure that your passion is being informed by what is true, not just by a need to be passionate. And that's why I say this is the time of the unexamined passion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like progressive Christians, for the most part, are overly naive. And when they see a movement like Black Lives Matter, where it's like, of course, nobody's going to argue with Black Lives Matter, that suddenly becomes the new Christian movement. And so they don't have the spiritual backing to be able to say, hey, like, let me look into this a little bit more, rather than just following blindly.
Exactly. And I think that's what leads a lot of people to refuse ultimately to examine the truth of their cause, because once you've given yourself to a cause and you've marched in the streets and you've basically publicly aligned yourself with it, now it would be rather threatening to turn around and say, by the way, am I supporting the right thing? And this is why I think a lot of people dig in their heels and say, no, don't even say anything, because they really don't want to entertain the possibility that they have been blindly following when they should have examined beforehand.
Yeah. I've always thought, and I don't know if this is true, but this is sort of a kind of interesting thought I had, is a lot of the youth today, I think, are more willing to move in these directions because their parents are so sort of firm in their belief. There's almost like this, I need to rebel for rebellion's sake. And since my parents won't listen to me, or they won't even slightly budge with sort of what I'm presenting with them, I don't like that, so I need to go in this opposite direction. And granted, I don't know if that's true, but I've been seeing that a lot within the ministry and the youth ministry that I work with, more of a rebellious sort of nature for rebellion's sake, which is
I'll bet you're right. I mean, It's a fine line, I think, sometimes between individuation and rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every young person has both the need and even the responsibility to individuate.
Yes.
They have to. If they're ever going to come into their own, they have to. And there's no way to individuate without making distinctions.
Yeah.
Well, I feel differently about this. Or I think that, so sometimes the rush of just that distinction is enough to get people to say, I need to rebel. Not only that, but the fact that if they have identified biblical truth with their parents' position and they want to individuate from their parents, it's more simplistic to just say, well, then I reject biblical truth. Why?
Yeah.
Because that's what my parents hold to and I'm individuating from them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that what we have to do is respect the need for individuation while asking plainly but respectfully, are you individuating away from a way of presenting things, a way of doing things, or from truth itself?
Yeah, I like that.
Because you can be a great rebel against all tradition and still maintain sound doctrine.
Yeah.
In fact, I think sometimes sound doctrine requires that of you. I got to say, I feel like a hippie again these days. I may as well be on a Grateful Dead concert the way I feel like I am so giving it back to the establishment. I really am.
Yeah.
But
that's
of
funny.
course, from a different perspective, but hey, everything old is new again, I guess.
It's honestly kind of funny that it's like history kind of just repeats itself kind of a deal. Like my generation is like there's a bunch of us that like you said, we feel like the hippies where it's like we don't want big government. We don't want like all this. We want more freedom. And
Individualism.
that's what everybody else doesn't want us to talk about. So it's kind of like reversed hippieism. It's kind of weird.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Berkeley used to be about the free speech movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know of no place more repressive than Berkeley.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's weird. So everything we said we believed in the 60s, you got to wonder now. And this, to me, I think it kind of speaks to the spiritual implications of all of this. I think diversity came knocking at the door and said, let me in. And I think we were right to say all voices welcome, let's talk. Not in the church. I don't believe all voices should be welcome within the sanctuary to preach whatever they want. But in a free culture where people can exercise their free will in a civilized way, of course, I think that's very important.
Yeah.
But I think that was seized on by something way beyond the cancel culture. And I think that spiritually speaking, if I hated humanity the way Satan does, I would want to do everything I could to confuse people, turn them against each other, create a mistrust of all the basics of the truth and the basics of the faith, scare the Christians to death and make them feel intimidated. I mean, I would try my best to orchestrate exactly what we're seeing today.
Yeah.
So I do think that plays into it as well.
And listeners, you heard it first. A new term by Bradley, reverse hippieism. I love it.
Reverse
Reverse
hippieism.
Reverse hippieism. Oh, beautiful.
So we have two more questions for you. One of my favorite lines you wrote, actually you quoted Nobel laureate, I'm going to butcher this name, Elie Wiesel. Is that correct? Did I pronounce that
You're
right?
close. Wiesel, I believe, is the correct
Wiesel, okay.
pronunciation.
And this is what you quoted: "Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never tormented." How important then is it for the church to react to this cancel culture today? Will there be terrible consequences if we don't? As well as, what can you say to a pastor on a practical level who is either like sick and tired of dealing with it, or even afraid to deal with the cancel culture in fear of being canceled themselves in the church?
I think it gets back to what we broadly expect of our lives as Christians. And this is where I think pastors can do a real service to their congregations by forget about getting into the specific social position items. Let's talk broadly about what is it to be in the world but not of the world. We are in a system, and I think Paul said that beautifully to the Ephesians, where there's the course of this world we used to walk according to, now we don't. So as believers, our very nature is against the tide.
Yeah.
At our best, we are rebels who are peaceful and loving and amiable, but we are rebels only because there is the way of God, there is the way of the world. And if we can accept that, then we can be bolder in talking about the fact that, well, then it is inevitable if we are going in a course that is contrary to the way of the world and our citizenship is in another country, it is inevitable that on key issues we will bump up against the common beliefs that the world is holding. Now, there was a time, I got to say, believers would say, well, duh, that's business as usual, but not in America. And I think in that sense, we probably had it too easy. We have traditionally been on friendly terms with the culture. Not that the culture was Christian, but you know what I mean? The culture was very amiable, very amicable to the idea of, let's agree to disagree, but you certainly have freedom of religion and freedom of speech. So I think that if pastors can address that, the fact that our lives as born-again believers, we are in the world, not of the world. All that is of the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, that is not of the world, or not of the Father, it's of the world. We are called to a different way of being. Therefore, our positions will be different. We seek to respectfully express our positions as opportunity and wisdom allow. We boldly express them within our own congregations where we will not relinquish ground. And in doing that, as peaceful citizens, we want to bring as many people into the kingdom as we can until we can no longer do that. I think if that's our basic framework, then it's a lot easier in that context to say, so of course I hold a pro-life view. Or of course I hold to what God did when he made humanity male and female, And I think that will make it easier. And that's why I say pastors, I think, if they're teaching that broader context, then it's much easier to explain why we believe what we believe and why it's so important. Just like with kids, if you wait until your kids are 12 to tell them, by the way, we don't look at porn in this house, why?
Yeah.
You hopefully will have raised your kids to believe from very early in life, we march to a different drum than a lot of other people do, because this is the God we serve in this house, and this is the document we look to for guidance, and this is the way we believe human beings should interact. So that by the time it gets to the porn question, that's only something that is harmonious with the broader principles you've already been teaching your kids. That, I think, is the approach we need to be taking.
Yeah, I like that. That kind of works. I do a lot of apologetics, and that's sort of the approach I take with a lot of my apologetics, where I'll have a one-on-one conversation with someone. I'll be like, let me just sort of explain my worldview. And once you explain the worldview, you ask the question, can you see why I would believe these things? And they'll go, yes, I do. And I'll be like, okay, seeing that this is your worldview, I see why you believe the things you believe. Now, let's now discuss fundamental worldviews before we get into all of these nuanced things, because I think whereas Christians, we're so busy, like, this is what it should be, this is what we believe, that people don't even fundamentally know what you believe to even understand why you should believe what you're believing. And so I think it's a fantastic approach.
Perfect. Absolutely. Because I think that, again, somebody can say, yes, it is logical that you believe what you believe in light of the worldview you just explained. Yes. Even if I don't agree with your worldview, I at least now see the logic of your position based on that worldview.
Yeah. And I've had some people try to do that to me, and they go, wait a minute, my worldview, something's weird happening here. And it lets them see their own inconsistencies sometimes, which is fascinating to see when that happens. Yeah,
and again, very important.
Yeah.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But before you go, Mr. Joe Dallas, where can our listeners go to find more information about you, find your books, get connected with you more?
Sure. And I've got a weekly podcast based on the book. So anyway, just my name, joedallas.com. Joe Dallas, one word, like the city, joedallas.com. And they can reach me there for any information about our services, about my podcast, about speaking engagements, whole nine yards.
That's great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast. Everyone, go out, look them up. Go grab this book on Amazon, Christians in a Cancel Culture. It was a fantastic book. And I think everyone needs to go out there and read it, especially if you're a Christian, to learn how to handle yourself and how to be prepared for Christ's sake more within the culture that they're going to experience every day. So I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast, and we are excited to see what you do in the future.
Oh, guys, it's great talking with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yep. It's our pleasure.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating wherever it is you listen to your podcasts. If you have suggestions for a future episode topic that you would like us to hit on, you can email us at thecaffeinatedchristian706@gmail.com. That's thecaffeinatedchristian706@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at The Caffeinated Christian Podcast. Thanks so much, guys. Have a terrific day.